Welcome! Today, we are going on a quest. We're going to take the humble, everyday chocolate chip cookie and, by unlocking the science inside it, turn it into an absolute masterpiece. So, let's get into it.
You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You follow a recipe to the letter, and you end up with the cookie on the left. Kind of flat, a little pale, maybe even doughy. But what we're all dreaming of, what we're really after, is the cookie on the right. One with that craggy top, a perfectly chewy center, and a deep toffee flavor that's just incredible. So how do we get from one to the other?
Well, here's the secret. We have to stop thinking like we're just baking and start thinking like we're chemists. I love this quote. Baking is not casual. It is applied chemistry. It's so true. Every single ingredient, every step, it's all part of a delicious chemical equation. And today, we're going to solve that equation for perfection.
Okay, so our quest starts with the absolute soul of the cookie, the butter. But we're not just going to melt it. Oh no. We are going to fundamentally change its chemical makeup to build a flavor foundation that is out of this world.
The process is called browning butter, and it's actually beautifully simple. You melt it, and you'll see it start to foam. That's just the 15% water content boiling away. Now, once that water's gone, the temperature of the fat shoots way up, and those little milk solids in the butter start to toast. And right there, that is where the magic begins. The science behind this amazing smell and color is something called the Maillard reaction. And you've seen this before. It's what gives a steak that perfect crust or bread its golden brown color. In our butter, the intense heat makes the milk proteins and sugars react, and they literally create hundreds of brand new aromatic compounds. We're talking nutty, toasty, butterscotch flavors. We're not just adding flavor here, we are creating it from scratch.
And what's the payoff for this one simple step? You've just turned your butter into a liquid flavor bomb. It's now packed with all these intense, nutty butterscotch notes that are going to sing through the entire finished cookie.
So, with our flavor foundation totally locked in, it's time to put on our engineer hats. We need to actually design the cookie's physical structure, its architecture, to get that perfect, satisfying chew. Now, the flour you choose is absolutely critical. You might think it doesn't matter, but it does. Cake flour, it's low in protein, which is going to give you a soft, almost mushy cookie. But bread flour, that's a whole different story. It's high in protein, and all that extra protein helps form a really strong gluten network. Think of it like a stretchy, structural scaffolding that gives our cookie its body and that amazing chewiness we're looking for.
But wait a second. This creates a brand new problem, doesn't it? To build that gluten network, we need water. But we just boiled all the water out of our butter in the first step. So, what do we do now?
The solution, you'll be happy to hear, is surprisingly simple. 1 extra egg yolk. And trust me, this isn't just a random addition. It's a very precise chemical move.
This little yolk is a total game changer for 3 reasons. First, it puts back the water we need to properly hydrate that high-protein bread flour. Second, yolks have lecithin, which is a natural emulsifier. It helps bind the fat and water together, which gives you a much denser, more even texture. And third, that extra bit of fat makes the center of the cookie unbelievably rich and fudgy. It is the perfect architectural fix. Okay, so we've handled flavor and structure, but now we've come to the most powerful and honestly, the most overlooked ingredient in our entire arsenal: plain old thyme. And don't just take my word for it. The amazing food scientist J. Kenji Lopez-Alt says that letting the dough rest is the single biggest improvement you can make. This isn't just about making the dough cold. It's about a deep, profound chemical transformation that only happens when you have a little patience.
And that transformation happens in stages. Even after just 30 minutes in the fridge, the fat solidifies, and that helps the cookies not spread out into thin puddles. But the real magic, that deep flavor development, happens over the next day or two. And we found that the absolute peak for both flavor and texture is right around that 48-hour mark.
So what is actually going on inside that bowl of dough while it's just sitting in the fridge? Well, there are 2 really critical scientific processes at work.
First up is hydration. Over time, the flour acts like a sponge, just slowly soaking up all the free water from the eggs. This actually dries the dough out a little bit, and that's a good thing. It concentrates the sugars and the butterfat, which leads to a much deeper flavor and an even chewier final texture. The second process is, well, this is where it gets really cool. It's called enzymatic breakdown. There are natural enzymes already in the flour, and when you give them time, they act like tiny little chefs. They get to work deconstructing these big, boring, flavorless starch molecules into smaller, sweeter, simpler sugars like fructose and glucose.
So why does that matter? Well, because these new, simple sugars that our tiny chefs just made, they caramelize way more easily and at lower temperatures. This is exactly what gives an aged dough cookie that incredible, dark, complex crust and that deep butterscotch flavor that you just cannot get any other way.
Okay, our dough has been chemically perfected. It is ready. Now it's time for the final act, where the simple laws of thermodynamics are going to take our cookie across the finish line.
The starting temperature of your dough is everything. If you bake room temperature dough, it spreads really wide and fast, and you get a thin, kind of boring, uniform cookie. But our cold, rested dough, the fat is solid, so it resists spreading. And that resistance, that's the whole key to creating an amazing textural contrast.
Here's how it works. When that cold ball of dough hits a hot baking sheet, the edges cook super fast. They set up and create this perfect, crispy ring. But because the center is so dense and cold, it heats up much, much more slowly. It stays perfectly underbaked, soft, and fudgy. It's just a brilliant little thermodynamic trick.
And just like that, the quest is complete. It all boils down to these 4 scientific keys to the perfect cookie. Number 1, brown the butter for amazing flavor. Number 2, use bread flour and an extra yolk for that chewy structure. 3, aids the dough to build complexity. And 4, bake the dough cold for that incredible textural contrast.
You see, by understanding these forces, you've totally elevated your craft. You're not just following a recipe anymore, no. You are now a dough architect.
And that leaves us with one final thought. If a single simple cookie holds this much incredible chemistry and physics, just imagine what other delicious secrets are waiting to be unlocked in your own kitchen.